Hi everyone, it's Paul here and thank you for listening today. Just before the podcast begins, I wanted to let you know that you can now bring the insights and advice from the world's great sports coaches into the room at your next event. We have interviewed more than 200 of the world's great coaches, and we use audio and video from those interviews to have them speak to the challenges that your team is facing. Our presentations bring the energy of sport into the workplace and bring a new context to the challenges that you are facing. The presentations are led by business leaders and great coaches themselves and can be delivered online or in person. If you'd like to know more, you can contact us using the details in the show notes.
A rich life isn't a straight line to a destination on the horizon. Sometimes it takes an unexpected turn with detours, new possibilities, and even another passenger or three. And with 100 years of navigating ups and downs, you can count on Edward Jones to help guide you through it all. Because life is a winding path, made rich by the people you walk it with. Let's find your rich together. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
The world of ancient Greek myth and the wider history of the Mediterranean is and always will be incredibly relevant. Whether you have a casual interest in myth or are a dyed-in-the-wool nerd for the ancient world, you will find your fix with Let's Talk About Myths, baby. I'm Liv Albert, and together with my amazing producer, Michaela Pengowish, we bring the context, intricacies, and the stories of ancient Greece and sometimes the wider Mediterranean to life. Let's Talk About Myths, Baby has something for everyone. Listen to Let's Talk About Myths, Baby wherever you get your podcasts, new episodes every Tuesday and Friday, or find more information at mythsbaby.com.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
Welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
To me, being perfect is not about that scoreboard out there.
This is a chance of a lifetime.
When you can understand the person, you can then work towards a common goal.
We are all on the same team.
Know your role and do it to the best of your ability.
Focus on the fundamentals. We've gone over time and time again.
Your defense has got to be better.
Leave no doubt tonight.
Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Hello and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast. My name is Paul Barnett, and here on the podcast we believe that there is no algorithm for leadership. And so we interview great sports coaches from around the world to try and find a couple of ideas to help us all be better leaders. Our great coach on this episode is Scott Roth. Scott is a former basketball player who played 160 NBA games with the Utah Jazz, San Antonio Spurs, and the Minnesota Timberwolves. His playing career also took him to Spain, Turkey, and Greece. As a coach, he has led teams in Spain, the Dominican Republic, the NBA G League, as well as being an assistant coach of the Chinese and Turkish national teams. He was also an assistant with the Mavericks, Golden State, Pistons, Raptors, and the Perth Wildcats in Australia. In 2021, he was appointed head coach of the NBA's expansion team, the Tasmanian Jack Jumpers. He led them to the grand final in his first year and the championship in his third. And just before we go to the interview, today's podcast is brought to you by the Macquarie University Business School's MBA program. Designed to empower, challenge and transform, the Macquarie MBA gives you the business skills and knowledge you need to succeed in an evolving global economy. To find out more, search for Macquarie University Business School's MBA. And now, please enjoy our interview with Scott Roth, and a special thanks to Christine Finnegan for helping set this up.
You're listening to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Well, Scott Roth, good morning from Australia. Good afternoon where you are, and welcome to the Great Coaches Podcast.
Yeah. I can't wait. I really appreciate it, Paul.
Scott, something simple to kick us off. Tell us where you are in the world and what you've been up to so far today.
Yeah, so I'm just on my break from the season. I've been home here in Florida, just outside of Miami, about an hour and a half north of Miami, and a new home that I built about 3 years ago that I haven't really never lived in, but about 2 months of the year when I get to come back at this time to have my break. So I really haven't lived here very much. But I'm home for another 6 weeks. I go back to Tassie in the middle of July and just enjoying the time off, my family, getting settled in this town and the area that I really am new to. I just came back from a big fishing trip last week, which I love to do up in Quebec, and just enjoying the summer, working on putting the team together slowly and all those little things going on.
Just a quiet day in the life of a head coach.
Yeah.
We're going to get into Tassie or Tasmania for our non-Australian listeners and your journey, which, as you were telling me just a minute ago, took you 58 years to arrive there. But I'd like to start, if we could, just by going back over some of the great coaches you've worked with. Trevor Gleeson, Australian, we've had on the podcast, but there's Don Nelson, Jerry Sloan. I saw Dwayne Casey in there as well. And I wondered, Scott, from working with these people up close, what it is that you think the great coaches do differently that sets them apart?
Well, I think my biggest thing that I've taken away from is, the diversity that I've had as a player, also being in Europe, and I've had probably my most influential coaches, to be honest with you, been in Europe when I was playing, and then come to the NBA and be around those guys you named. And then, I get home last year and I got a letter from Popovich congratulating me on the championship. And, these people that I've spent a great deal of time on, I think the biggest takeaway for me is they're people, coaches. They're really in tune to the players and who the players are. And I think over time you learn the simple things that make it successful. And Nelly's always been known as a player's coach. And those type of things are hugely, I think, important because you get to a certain level and everyone has knowledge of X's and O's, and some might be a little better here or there. But not everyone's a great communicator or can really relate to players and have them buy into something other than themselves. So the spreading the wealth of being around a lot of different coaches from around the world and trying to pull that all together, the learning experience has been incredible. And I always reflect upon probably Nelly the most. He's been the most influential for me because I lived with him when I was in Golden State for a year. It was like being with your best professor and going home with him in the evening and then watching basketball evening and smoking cigars with him in the penthouse. And that year was incredible. And he became the winningest coach in NBA history that year. And being around him, and I was with him early in my career with the Dallas Mavericks with Dirk and Nash. He's been one of those guys that has laid a pathway for me of sometimes not what to do. He was very daring and had a lot of gumption to do things that were just out of the box that would scare the hell out of most coaches. And so there's a lot of things I would think I would never do that. But there's a lot of outside the box thinking with him. And I think that's one of the things that I really enjoyed about being around him. And he was laid back and easygoing for the most part and a wonderful mentor.
We're going to talk a little bit about him later on and the whole idea of being the winningest and how that shaped him. But can we first talk about Gundy? Because when I was conversing with you and we were trying to set this interview up, right at the bottom of your email, there's a quote and it just caught me off guard. It says, "I will not allow dirty feet to walk through my mind."
Yes.
Why does that quote resonate with you so much?
Yeah, you're about the 100th person that when they read something in my email, they don't talk about the email, they talk about the quote. And I'm glad it resonated with other people. They've caught it and it's really made them think. But I think over the last 10 years for me, my perspective on things have changed greatly. And I'm in my fourth quarter of my life. I'm hoping for overtime. But for a lot of my life, I've tried to be what other people wanted me to be. And I tried to act a certain way because I thought that's how the NBA wanted you or how you're supposed to be. And then, this world of social media got involved in the last 15, 20 years, and now everyone can bombard you on there and talk about you. And, I listened to it. I bought into it. I'm not on social media now, but, I read all those things they said about me and my family and those kind of things that really are impactful, more so in a negative way. And after a while, it was just, I got to turn this off. And for me, it was just about being me, and I just won't allow dirty feet to walk through my mind anymore. I won't let people in that aren't going to be really impactful in my life. And the people that matter to me, they know who they are. They're the closest ones to me, and I'll listen to them all day. But I think it's just a reminder that stay focused on what I'm doing, be confident in what I'm doing. Daring greatly is really difficult at times, and you're daring greatly every day as a coach to stand up in front of everyone and be vulnerable. And you really have to be true to yourself. And if you start letting these outside influences get into your mind and self-doubt, they can destroy you and they can make you miserable.
Scott, I know that you've experienced 3 sets of loss, 3 very close people passed in your life. Did this change in mentality, this coming off social media, is it linked in any way with that experience you had?
Well, I think for me, I've had these unfortunate 3 people pass away: my sister, my mother, and my father, and they've all impacted me differently. And I think, again, as you get older, you start to reflect even more about where you are in your life and what becomes actually important and what you really wasted time on. And I wasted time on a lot of things that just weren't important at the end of the day. And social media and all that is one of those things you waste your time on reading about after every game, what they say about you or your team. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter. And when you start thinking about life and how short it actually is and the quality that you want to live, you start to change your perspective. At least for me, it might not be for everyone. I was one of those coaches that was 24/7 and miserable, and never was happy and never satisfied. We could win by 20, it wasn't good enough. And you're just on this unfortunate treadmill of just trying to do better and looking for the next job and looking for the next place and making really good money, but not really being happy. And ultimately, I just had to take a step back, and I keep, remembering, some of the things my father taught me and where I was and started reflecting. And, I don't wake up a day without thinking about, the one that really impacted me the most is my father dying in my arms and couldn't save his life. And those things are with you forever. And those are big moments in people's lives. And I just have to honor what's true to me and what's true to my family and who I am. And like I said, these last 10 years, the winning and losing is okay. It's not going to drive me nuts like it used to. It's really about mentorship and providing a legacy for my daughter and my wife.
I'm going to get to legacy later, but I want to stick with this idea of, you mentioned it when you talked about great coaches being, people managers and communication. What strikes me learning about your story, which has taken you from Turkey to China, there's Greece in there, there's now Tasmania, and of course the NBA in the United States. You seem to have, through these experience in these different cultures, you seem to have found a way to communicate with people that can transcend national identity. And I'm wondering if you're able to capture the essence of that or that learning in a way that you could share with us.
I think it just, listen, when you're in China and you have an interpreter, then he's trying to explain things back to the players, that's a difficult thing. But there is a commonality of what love looks like and what actually caring for someone is and being vulnerable to them and understanding where they're coming from and getting a little deeper than just X's and O's. And so for me, it was about trying to connect with these players and find out how they live and what they're about. It wasn't about basketball. And so everywhere I've been, it's been more about the connection of these players and the value and trying to invest in them and actually know that I really care about them. And I think that goes such a long way in coaching world, that when players really truly believe that you know them, you're invested in them, you'll do what you need to do for them, you'll coach them hard, but you'll tell them the truth. It goes a long way. And when you start going across cross-cultural avenues, there's a commonality of just people want to be loved. They want to be valued. And whether it's basketball or in some other kind of business, it doesn't really matter. And I think the experience is common. Basketball, the language is the same. When we start speaking it, no matter where you are, they're going to understand rebound, shooting, passing. But it is the vulnerability of who you are, and they see you as something other than just this coach that stands in front of them and yells at them, and that there's a really caring side behind all that. And I hope that's, what I convey when I work with my players and around my players. And that's been everywhere I've been as a player and as a coach.
You know, what's amazing, you talk about love, care, truth, vulnerability. And what's amazing is that this has somehow, because you started a team from scratch, we've been able to see the impact of these variables in real time. And I wanted to talk about that, if we could, a little bit, because in your inaugural season with a new team that's never had a team, it's never had a team in this state before, and it's the small state in Australia that often gets overlooked, but you take that team to the grand final. Now, unfortunately, you fall short, but a couple of years later, you're the champions. But if I've got my stats or my reading right, that journey started with a training camp in an apple orchard.
Yeah, so when I put this roster together, it was during COVID, and we were in a sprint to put a roster together. And, I needed doctors, dentists, staff, players, everything within about 3 months before we played our first game. And so it was a sprint. And to create this avenue for our players to come into, I thought it was really important to understand what it meant to be Tasmanian. And that's all I did is my 3 months, really keep my mouth shut as this American guy coming into a country and just listen to what it meant to be a Tasmanian, the values that the Tasmanians had and what they were looking for in a sports team and just how they were as people. And so it was hugely important that I got the right kind of guys to do that in the beginning. But I spent some time with Greg Bellamy. He did something very similar with the Storm, and we kind of morphed it into, and we'll do it every single year. We'll do it this year again. Our first day of practice is not in the gym. Our players get a little bit blown away, especially the new ones. I'll tell them to meet us at 8 o'clock outside. We'll meet in the parking lot, and we'll actually go and work in Tasmania. We'll pick out businesses and actually go to work. And that first year, we went to an apple orchard that's down the road, to Andrew Smith's Apple Orchard, who was one of our sponsors. And our players went and worked in the restaurant. They worked in the orchard and picking apples, and then they worked in the packing plants. And so from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, they worked next to Tasmanian, shoulder to shoulder, and actually worked. And that was our first day of practice. And for me, it was about creating this culture of what it means to be Tasmanian, what these people are looking for, to understand what Tasmanians are. They're hardworking, blue-collar people that kind of have a chip on their shoulder. They're always kind of looked down upon. And our players to understand what it meant to be in the state, what these people were feeling. And so we've created this annually now, and we've moved on to other businesses, and our players go to work. Our first day of practice is working somewhere within Tasmania with 3 or 4 different companies. Usually it's stressful work. I don't want them behind desks. I want them out doing things. We have SRT, the delivery company for all the refrigerated foods in Australia. Our players are on their trucks delivering food throughout the mornings. We've done a lot of different things for our first day of practice, which creates, again, a vulnerability for our players to see what the working class is, to have some humble pie, to understand how fortunate you are to do what you do for a living, to understand your parents worked extremely hard just like this, and to be grateful that you have a chance to go play basketball for the next 7 months and not be doing maybe some of these jobs that are really, really difficult jobs, and respect the fact that when we travel around Tasmania or we go to the mainland, we're representing these people that are working in these orchard fields or in this restaurant. And that has created the beginning of our culture of the grit and grind and the vulnerability of being a jack jumper and what it means to be a jack jumper.
It's a terrific story. And now the state, in turn, Scott, has embraced you, and they're asking you to represent them on the world stage. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just been a whirlwind of things, and we're currently just in some discussions with the government. But overall, for me, it's more about defending the island. You know, we came up with that right away also during this process, and it was one of the things that now is morphed into I was a defensive coach, and we kind of were coming up with things early on, and it was defend the island. But really, it's turned into something much bigger now in the last 4 years of what that means to the entire state, to what it means to a business, to a youth group, about how proud you are to be on this island and to defend it with all you have. And that is our motto. And the government and other people have really rallied around myself and my family, allowed me to go out and speak in other engagements. I'm working on some things with the government behind the scenes. I'm not going to get too much into that, but there's some other things that are happening that are quite exciting. But for me, it was creating this atmosphere that this is a state team. This is not a team that's just in Hobart. We represent the entire state, and by defending the island, we are defending this entire state for you. And what that means to the people of Tasmania we hit a nerve at the right time just after COVID. People wanted to belong to something. And here comes this team rolling in that when I put this team together, multiple people, was written in the paper, this is the worst team in the history of the NBL that I put together in my first year. And if you're lucky to win 5 games, be thankful. And we went to the grand finals in our first year with a lot of guys that had chips on their shoulders and just a lot of hardworking guys. And it really resonated right off the bat with Tasmanians.
That wasn't the only thing you did to get the culture going. You also set up a Bloodlines group. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to spend a few months in Perth, and they had a Bloodlines group there that was basically all their former players throughout the history of Perth's glorious, 35 straight years of being in the playoffs. And when I got to Tasmania, I wanted to do something very similar, but I wanted to expand it because we were talking about the entire state. And so we created the Jack Jumpers Bloodline. I think there's 26 now members as of today. We try to add 2 or 3 every year, but it was, again, another way of, people saying, you're never going to connect the state. It's divided, to the north and to the south. It's just 2 separate places. They don't get along. They can't agree on beer. They can't agree on anything. And you're never going to have this state come together about one thing. And the way I did that was just through the Bloodlines group. I ended up basically driving this corridor from Davenport to Hobart, up and down every weekend for about 2.5 months of knocking on anyone's door, calling anyone that would pick up the phone that was a former referee, an administrator, a former coach, anything that had to do with basketball in the last 30 or 40 years, and ask them for help and ask them to revive their passion to come back and support this team and be a Jack Jumper and start our Bloodlines. And what we ended up creating was the Bloodlines, and it starts from the top of Tasmania to the bottom. And we unearth, past Olympians. We unearth unbelievable representatives of this group that have the history of what Tasmania is in basketball, and they tell the story. And I call upon them all the time throughout the state to help us whenever we need to be helped, and they're quite supportive. And they were looking to get around something. They were laying dormant for years and years and years, wanting to be a part of something, but just didn't have anything really to generate the interest. And creating this Bloodlines group has been a wonderful thing, I think, for the entire state. We also honor them through our players. We have a Bloodlines jacket that all of our players receive at the beginning of the season. And so we honor them. And we had our first player this year retire, and Clint Steino, our captain for the last 4 years. And the reason why we created this was we were trying to, in my mind, create the old bloodline and connect it with the new bloodline, which would be the new Jack Jumpers who would start to retire and become part of that. And Clint now is going to be is a bloodline member from the new generation. And so as our players retire, they'll be able to come back into this Bloodlines group and know that they're welcomed to games and support. And that connected the state. And that was the way that we started to get up and down that corridor and make sure that everyone felt like this was a team for Tasmania.
What a great story. Terrific energy. I can just imagine the sense of purpose and connection that would have created within.
It was fun. I mean, knocking on people's doors and calling them cold turkey and saying, I'm this American guy. You don't know me, but I need help. And I'll drive anywhere. I'll meet you anywhere. And knock on a door and someone opens it and they're like, who is this big guy here? And I explained what I am and what I'm trying to do. And it was exciting.
Could I go from traveling around Tasmania to a fascinating quote I found from you? And you say, I don't see myself as a coach. I see myself as a mentor. Coaching isn't one of my strengths. Managing people is my strength. Now, there's many people listening, Scott, where people management is a challenging aspect of what they'll be doing, no matter what type of leadership role they're in. What was the lesson that you had to learn to turn management into a strength?
I think the biggest thing for me was you have to get rid of some of your ego at some point or another, because I was in this, when I'm 35 in the 45 range, I think I'm a coach and I know it all and I'm going to be this guy. And ultimately, it was about people, and it continued to end up being more about people than me trying to show that I knew everything and had to watch every video and try to solve every problem. And as I, again, getting older, there's 25 better coaches in Australia than Scott Roth. Believe me, there are, from assistant coaches in the NBL to the head coaches. I'm at the bottom of the list, and I don't mind that. I'm very comfortable with that, to be quite honest with you. I know what I know, my philosophy has always been KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And so my basketball side is very simple and straightforward. But the mentorship is really where I thrive, where I believe that that's where there's a difference that can be made in a team. And that investment, again, in players and our investment in each other and how we go about doing that during the course of the season is hugely important to the overall culture, the character of our guys. And so morphing into that is something that really excited me. And the more I thought about it as I started to get a little bit older, the more I was leaning more towards, the coaching is great, and I do coach, but I don't need to be the smartest in the room. I don't need to have all the answers. I can be okay and be comfortable on what I know about basketball. But this other area over here is really where the home runs hit. This is where it's all going to happen, and this is where you're going to thrive and succeed, or this is where you're going to fail. And for me, it was just, how do I go about that? Holding people accountable, selling them something that is bigger than themselves and believing in it, and allowing me to go on this journey with them was really, really important. And that whole selling factor was really communicated through doing. People can say, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then they actually don't follow through. And what people find out with me is if I say something, I'm doing it. And the players ended up believing in that, and we did what I said we would do. And that just morphed into a whole nother thing. But yeah, the coaching thing it is what it is for me. It's not the end of the world one way or another for me, but the mentorship and the legacy I could leave with my players is something that really excites me.
Before we got AT&T Business Internet, whenever we needed to get another device set up in the office, we called Janet's nephew. Charged us in pizza bites and energy drinks. He once renamed the network to New England Clam Router. Professional? Not really. Necessary? At the time, yes. Now we've got AT&T Business Internet. Easy to set up, no nephews required.
AT&T Business Internet. Connecting changes everything.
Do you keep hearing podcast ads, like this one, for example, but always wonder how you actually get involved with them for your own brand or organization? Well, it's easier than you think. We're Acast, and we give you the platform to do it all yourself. Browse thousands of popular podcasts, choose the shows that match your perfect audience, set your budget, and launch. And if you want a hand, our podcast specialists are there to help you launch with confidence. This is podcast advertising without barriers. Get started at acast.com/advertise.
There's an interesting part of your story I've struggled to reconcile, actually, because I have heard you talk about love and care and the way this drives you, but you're very calm. I think you're very calm on the sideline. You might not think you are, but I think relative to your peers, you are very calm. And yet, in interviews, you also say that you're very emotional and you cry multiple times in a week in front of the team.
Yeah.
How have you managed to find this balance between emotion and control? Because I think it's something you've excelled at. I think it's something you might have at an elite level.
Yeah, I don't really know how it's transpired other than the fact that I was tired of being kind of the asshole, sorry the language, but the asshole on the sideline that's running around just being a fool. It's not about me. I've done my coaching during the week. Believe me, I'm hard. I'm difficult on my guys. I push them. I make them uncomfortable. I push the boundaries with them during the week. And when the game comes, I just step back and let them try to enjoy the moment and the process of what they're doing. And so that calmness probably comes from knowing that I've done some work during the week, and now it's time to let them just enjoy themselves as players. And I always go back again thinking that, I was a player first, and what did I enjoy more than anything else as a player? And I didn't want a coach berating me all the time and doing that during the course of the game. And so I'm kind of hands off in those areas as much as can. In 4 years, I've probably gone off once or twice only in the locker room at halftime, which is probably extreme rarity for most teams. That's a very, very low number. I'm very sure of that. But for me, again, it was just allow them to play, do my work in the middle of the week, And I am quite emotional because, again, I just reflect on so many things over these last 7, 8, 9 years. When I see players do, great things or buying into our culture, or great when no one's watching them and I reward them because I found out they did something, that's emotional for me because they're buying into what we've been talking about. And Tasmania makes you cry, man. The people there, the love that you get from there is incredible. And for me, we are uncommon. We have to be uncommon of the other 9 teams. And, we're grown men, but we're in the locker room talking about love and emotion and these things that really are not set for what people would think would go on in a professional locker room. And for the most part, it doesn't. But for me, I lead with empathy. I lead with vulnerability. I want to be authentic to them. And I don't want to act as though I'm tougher than them or I don't have emotion. They know my stories. They know what I've gone through. And we make sure that we're vulnerable to each other. And that love and knowing shoulder to shoulder what people are about, it has a huge value in your work. It has a huge value when you show up every single day to work with these guys and what they've gone through and what their families have gone through. There's a value in that that's just it's untangible. You can't quite grip it, but you feel it when you're inside with us. That's quite different. And again, I'm really proud of those things as opposed to winning a championship or losing or winning. It's not how I'm going to judge my life. It's not going to be on my tombstone that Scott Roth won X amount of games or lost. It will not be there. It is not really important at the end of the day. These other things are what I'm really passionate about over these last few years.
Scott, there's another aspect of your personality I'd like to ask about if it's not too personal. There's a couple of instances where you talk about switching off after the game or having a cigar and spending time with the family. But then I've also found a couple of instances where you talk about the fact that you're very tough on yourself and that you don't give yourself a break, I think was the language you used.
Yes. And I think that was really early on, not early on, but again, probably in the last 8 or 9 years, I walk. I'm a walker and I walk every morning here about 6 miles. And about 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago, I was basically every morning on a death walk. I would get up in the morning and beat myself up, whether it was in season or not, about failures, what I wasn't doing well. And it was an hour of just torment of, I'm not good enough. I'm not where I need to be. And I, at the end of the day, the thief of joy is comparison. And when you start comparing yourself where you are in your life and what you think you should be doing, it will destroy you. And it was destroying me because someone else was making more money or had a better job and I was way better than them. And so all that beat up that you go through can be quite detrimental. And again, that was the point where I started I will not allow dirty feet to walk through my mind. I had to get rid of that and just throw it away. And I think refocusing on people and other people's passion really freed me from being so negative about myself and the complex of my worth. And my worth really wasn't valued at that time the way it should have been. And my mental state wasn't as good as it should have been. And, you learn a harsh lesson because I was probably a couple of years of just depression really at the end of the day if I really think about how badly I was functioning. I was making money. I had a great family, beautiful car, house, but it was not good enough. I got to be better. That guy over there's got that job. I need that job. I'm a better coach than him. I should get that job. I lost these games and I should have done this better. And that beat down is real. And it took a lot of time for me to just get rid of it. And it was not easy. And but once I got past it, I haven't looked back.
Listening to you, it sounds like you were able to reframe competitiveness in a way that was more healthy or more effective.
Yeah. I think for me, again, people have said it before, and I think they get a little sideways when I say, I don't really care about winning and losing. It's not the thing that I wake up in the morning thinking about, like, I got to win this game. I don't wake up thinking about that. I just got to win the day. I got to be really good today for my players and for my wife and for my kids and for the staff and for the organization and for Tasmania. I don't wake up in the morning thinking, if I don't win this game, that's all the value I have. And when I started getting rid of that, I really started enjoying myself so much more. Listen, I'm super competitive. I didn't get to where I am now by not being competitive. But ultimately, my values, again, have switched to something that has allowed me personally, it might not be for everyone, to function better, to feel better about myself, to understand what I really do well and what I don't do well, and be okay with it. And switching is something that can be quite hard. And when I say those kind of things, sometimes people take it like, oh, Roth doesn't care about winning. Why is he coaching the team? And so on and so forth. But that's a bunch of bull. I do care. But ultimately, it is not driving me. It is not the thing that I wake up in the morning worried about. I got to win a championship. I have to do this. It's not the driving force. And that freedom is quite powerful.
Do you talk about this to your players, Scott? Because
Absolutely.
I imagine even your staff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it's all about process. And my life is about process, really, when you think about it. But we're just about stacking days. Can we win today? You know, in my 4 years, we've never talked about the standings, where we sit. We've never talked about the playoffs. We've never talked about things that have to do with winning, per se. Our thing is about just winning the day and stacking those days, and they will take care of themselves. And if we have a bad weekend and we don't play well, we're just going back Monday to start stacking those days again and doing really good at the details of what we believe in and following through on that. And if you're doing that enough, time and time again, the wins and those things should take care of themselves if you have some luck and stay healthy and all those things. So, you know, we're not talking about we got to win the next 4 games or we're going to be out of the playoffs. We got to win the next 4 games to jump ahead of so-and-so. That's never, ever been a conversation with me. It never will be. It doesn't matter. It just matters that when we wake up this morning and these guys come in to check in at 7:30 with me and we start our day with the Jack Jumpers, that the most important thing is you are investing in someone else, and that the next 5 hours, we're going to just try to get better. And we're just going to try to make an incremental improvement. And then we're going to start the next day over and do the same thing again. And that really becomes the process of what I value. Every player wants to win a championship. I know the players follow the standings. I know all that's done behind the scenes on social media, whatever. I don't need to talk about it. I need to talk about our process and what it actually takes to get to where we need to go.
What does it mean to live a rich life? It means brave first leaps, tearful goodbyes, and everything in between. With over 100 years' experience navigating the ups and downs of the market and of life, your Edward Jones financial advisor will be there to help you move ahead with confidence. Because with all you've done to find your rich, we'll do all we can to help you keep enjoying it. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
You've got social dialed in. Search is doing its thing. So why do your marketing results look the same as 6 months ago? That's because you're fishing in the same pond as everyone else. Podcast listeners are a different audience entirely. More engaged, harder to reach through traditional channels, and ready to act when someone they trust makes a recommendation. We're Acast, and we put them right in front of you. Browse thousands of the world's leading podcasts, book host reads or run your own ads, and track every conversion in real time. Same skills you already have, brand new results. Acast. Acast.com/advertise.
And Scott, with that mentality, I know it's a new team and you helped shape the culture in that team, but that would be maybe a challenging mindset for the stakeholders that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a couple of benefits that, you know, when I look back on it that I had. The first benefit was I'm not Australian. I'm surely not from Tasmania. And so I have no loyalty to anyone other than doing the right thing when I got down there. So I didn't owe anyone a favor. So I didn't have to put anyone on my staff I didn't want it. I didn't have to pick anyone that I didn't want to. And so it was a clean slate for me to just feel good about who I was getting and buying into that. I think the other thing was my age at this point was I'm not chasing my next job. I think if a young coach would have had this job, he would not have thought so much about culture and foundational things. He would have thought, how do I get the best players? I got to survive 1 or 2 years to get my next job. That was the last thing on my mind. Mine was, how do I build something sustainable that has some foundational value that will be here long after I'm gone? And that was my mindset. I wasn't chasing winning. I thought that if I could do these right things and line these things up, that things would take care of themselves as we went along, because I trusted in my knowledge and experience and the people that I had hired to get us there. And I think being a little older and a little wiser and not chasing winning and not chasing my next job allowed me to have patience, time, settled, selling the fact that we're trying to build something that's going to be sustainable in Tasmania for a long time. And this is not a one-hit wonder. And we're not going to just throw a ton of money at it to think that we're just going to buy our way through there. Where I think a younger coach would, again, been more aggressive and Bobby thought about values, maybe got some people that were good players, but would be hard to manage, but maybe those guys can win me some games and I'll be able to move on to the next spot. And it's really tough in expansion and I got to get out of here. And how do I do that? For me, it was, I'm all in. I'm just building this thing and being patient. I was lucky enough, also to have, Larry Ketzelman and Christine Finnegan at the time and Simon Brookhouse understood that, what I told them, that there's going to be some patience here and that we have to build something sustainable, which they all wanted. But winning and losing obviously is important, and we were lucky enough to do pretty well the first year.
Well, it's a terrific story, and it's not finished yet. Scott, can I take a sideways step again if I can? When you got the job, I understand that you said to the players, and a lot of players came to you wanting promises, court time, minutes, positions,
absolutely,
and so forth. And you said to them, the only thing that I will promise you is that you will be coached and you will be made uncomfortable. It's the second part of that I just wanted to drill in because I knew your philosophy on love and care. I read about it and you shared it with us today. But there's this balance, isn't there, between showing deep care for someone but also challenging them to the point where they do feel uncomfortable enough to grow. And I think, if anything, it's actually probably the number one, well, loath to say it in such definite terms, but it is a key challenge of leadership. Could you just tell us a little bit about how you found that balance, pushing individuals to the right level?
Yeah, I go back to probably, my time in Utah, really. You played on your merit of how you practiced and how you actually did it the old school way. It wasn't how much money you made and then you got on the floor or who had the most popularity contest or who sold the most jerseys, and that's who we're playing. And it was just old school mentality. And that's how I've been brought up. That's how I played. That's how the coaches I've been around for the most part have been. But for me, it was, I'm starting this franchise and everyone is knowing that, one, we have a lot of money to spend because we have no players. So everyone wants to kind of get a hold of the money, but then everyone wants to start because they feel like I'm the guy. And for me, it was kind of the opposite. Like, that's not how it's going to be down here. Like, you're going to have to earn your way onto the floor, and I'm not promising you anything. And people wanted promises. If this player comes down to you, Scott, can you have to guarantee him 20 minutes or he's not going to sign. And I said, well, thanks. We'll talk to you later. And I went on to the next guy. And I think holding that steady for the last 4 years, people already know when you come down there, nothing's guaranteed to you. The imports aren't guaranteed anything. When I talk to them, they're the highest paid players in general. They're not guaranteed anything, whether they're starting or not. And when the minute I tell them that you're not getting guaranteed that you're going to start, we lose some. And that's okay because their values are not the same as mine. And they're not the same values of the people of Tasmania and or our organization. So once you kind of set the boundaries and you're able to actually stick to it, players love that. They actually know that, wow, this guy actually values us practicing. And if I do well and practice long enough, I'm going to actually get on the floor and actually jump ahead of someone and he'll put me in a game. And that's been the case for us for the last 4 years. We've had players that have been 10th, 11th, 12th per se on our depth chart that are now starting for us, that have worked their way through it. And I've rewarded them for that. And I don't mind rewarding for that because I was that guy. I was that guy trying to work through that. And when I thought I would work through it, I never got rewarded because the coach just always played the most popular guys or the guys that had the most money. And so I think holding them accountable to that, holding myself accountable to that, creates a place where you can't become uncomfortable. I can push you to these boundaries because there's something for you on the other side. I told my daughter the other day, everything you want is on the other side of hard. And all those things, you have to get to the other side of that. And being uncomfortable is part of it. The stretch is hugely important. And you're not going to be uncomfortable if I promise you 20 minutes before you ever got to the gym. Like, that's not fair to the other 8 guys, 9 guys I have on the roster. So let's all get uncomfortable here, and let's all make this a battle, and we're all doing the same thing. But that fine line for me started with the accountability and not breaking my vow. And as I told you before, when I say something, I'm doing it. And no one has come to the Jack Jumpers with a promise. And every single year, including this year, we have agents or players wanting a promise, and we've lost out on them, and that's fine. I'll find another one.
I love this idea of not breaking my vow. It's a very powerful sentence. Scott, we're almost out of time. I know you've got a coaching call coming up.
No worries.
But you've mentioned legacy twice,
Yes.
so I would like to ask you about it. I know you're not finished yet as a leader.
Yes.
Coaching, who knows? But I know that you've got many years of leadership ahead of you, and I'd like to ask you what you hope is the legacy you'll eventually leave with the people that you've led.
Yeah, I think for me, again, it's really accumulated in these last few years, and especially in Tasmania. You know, they've taken a part of my heart. You know, and for me, there's a couple things out of there that I hope will resound for quite a long time, which is defend the island, which has resonated across the entire state. The ability to connect a state when no one said it cannot be done. It's not been done politically. It's not been done by any sports team in the history of the sports in Tasmania. And to have a team that's been connected from top to bottom. And then lastly, just the hopefully positive impact I've had on people, not only just the basketball community, but people around Tasmania when I've traveled and had a chance to talk to schools or been in other places, getting a different perspective from this big goofy American that came in, and you guys wrapped your arms around him and listened to some of the things I had to say. And those legacies for me, I hope will resound for a long time. You know, when you're able to impact a player off the floor and know that in 5 years from now, Clint Steiner will still call you and say, hey, how's everything going? Or those things are, you know, you're cherishing them. And those are the things that, you know, really pride myself on. A Jack McVeigh making the Olympics, who had no chance 3 years ago. No one wanted him. He became a boomer. Then he made the NBA. Then he made the MVP finals. The Magne, never been a boomer, makes the Olympics. Those moments are what hopefully my legacy about helping those guys along the journey and giving them a pathway of what it looks like.
It's a terrific story, Scott. It's not finished yet, but it's started in such a powerful way. And I thank you so much for taking the time to share it with us today.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Paul.
Hi, everyone. You have been listening to the great coach, Scott Roth. I hope you got a lot out of Scott's story and enjoyed his energetic style and the enthusiasm he brings to leadership. When I was going back through the interview, some of the things that stood out for me were Scott's view that allowing the outside influence of social media into your mind can stop you from being vulnerable enough to dare greatly. And from this, I pondered on the question of how do you manage the outside influences that can, in his words, drag dirty feet through your mind? The way he uses vulnerability to illustrate the role that care plays in his leadership style, and how he uses this to coach hard and challenge people. And this got me thinking about how do I find the balance between telling people the truth, but also exhibiting care. And the fascinating story of how he taught his new players and the club what it meant to be Tasmanian by sending them to work in an apple orchard, as well as the Bloodlines group that he has set up for people that have shaped Tasmanian basketball to help them stay connected to the new heritage that was emerging. And this challenged me to think about the routines that I use to connect my team at work, the identity that has shaped it. I'll put those 3 questions in the show notes in case they're of any help to you. And just before we go, if you have any feedback, then please let us know. Just like Keith McFarland, who, after listening to our interview with Brian Goorjian, said simply, outstanding insights. Thanks, Keith. The interaction with the people around the world who listen gives us great energy. And so if you have any feedback or comments, please let us know. All the details on how to connect with us are in the show notes or on our website, thegreatcoachespodcast.com.
A rich life isn't a straight line to a destination on the horizon. Sometimes it takes an unexpected turn, with detours, new possibilities, and even another passenger, or three. And with 100 years of navigating ups and downs, you can count on Edward Jones to help guide you through it all. Because life is a winding path, made rich by the people you walk it with. Let's find your rich together. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
The world of ancient Greek myth and the wider history of the Mediterranean is and always will be incredibly relevant, whether you have a casual interest in myth or are a dyed-in-the-wool nerd for the ancient world. You will find your fix with Let's Talk About Myths, baby. I'm Liv Albert, and together with my amazing producer, Michaela Pengowish, we bring the context, intricacies, and the stories of ancient Greece and sometimes the wider Mediterranean to life. Let's Talk About Myths, Baby has something for everyone. Listen to Let's Talk About Myths, Baby wherever you get your podcasts, new episodes every Tuesday and Friday, or find more information at mythsbaby.com.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.